Welcome to Brainstorming America. I'm Ken Rollins, here with John Merrill, who's co-host. Good to see you, sir.
How are you, Ken?
It's good to see you. Good weather for coming up here for the first. Every time you come up here, it's raining, storming, whatever.
But today's a great day.
Yeah, it's a good day the Lord has given us. So good to see you again. And I've been keeping up with you on Facebook. So I know some of the things you've done, but it's hard. It wears my Facebook out. You go so many places, do so many things.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of discussion going on now. Still, I've talked to you about this before, but last week I heard the same problem. There's a big worry about the conservatives about ballot harvesting.
Sure.
And I guess it's exactly what it sounds like. But could you explain in detail to the people just exactly what ballot harvesting is and how it would affect us, the voters?
I'd be happy to do that, Ken. You know, actually, ballot harvesting is already illegal in the state of Alabama. So you may ask, what is ballot harvesting? Ballot harvesting is when an individual is charged with trying to collect multiple ballots from multiple voters and turn those ballots in at the same time that the individual is turning his or her own in, or independent of his or her own returned ballot. In doing so, that collection activity often involves payment for the ballots from those individuals that they've been received. It could also involve not just cash payments, but alcohol or some other type of liquid gold, as people might say, or tobacco products, or any kind of other stimulant that would satisfy the individual that's trying to give you the ballot, so that that ballot can be returned on behalf of the candidate that the ballot harvester prefers. The reason that this is done is to effectively influence an election, and to influence an election in an unfair, unjust, and criminal way. And that's why it's against the law. Now, there are people in Montgomery who will be filing legislation once again in 2024 to try and let people know that they're for election security, they're for ballot security. They want to make sure that people are aware that they're opposed to ballot harvesting. But many of these things are done strictly to try to promote themselves and try to make sure that people are aware that their intentions are to draw some point of recognition to themselves to show that they're high on election integrity and election integrity matters. And you have to be careful when you're watching what's going on in Montgomery, because a lot of things are done for posturing purposes and for positioning purposes, just to make sure that people are able to stay in the news and that they're able to promote themselves, and that you are paying attention to what's going on where they're involved, as opposed to what's going on to promote good government throughout the state of Alabama.
There's something else that, because you used to be the Secretary of State for a lifetime, one of the things that they talk about a lot, and I noticed, was where people are lined up to vote, and somebody walks around with bottles of water, things giving out different items to the people in line.
Yeah, sometimes water, sometimes food, candy, different things. But in addition to all of those things, also sample ballots that have been marked that are favoring a candidate or a party over another.
Just showing them who to vote for.
Yes, sir. And let me mention that none of those things are illegal as long as they're done outside 30 feet to the entrance of the polling place. And that's in any one of the 1,980 polling sites in the state of Alabama.
So that's what if they are past the 30 feet and they're given the sample ballots?
Yes, sir. If they're beyond the 30 feet, that's not against the law.
Wow. Well, you know that's what they're going to do, 31 feet.
That's right.
We have to be vigilant, folks. As I was coming here today, I was listening to the Attorney General of the United States testifying before Congress about his prosecuting of Hunter Biden are not prosecuting. They've gone 5 years. They've let the statute of limitations run out. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but you had something to do with the law in your former job. What does that tell you that the special counsel would intentionally allow certain items of tax violations to expire so before he took the case?
Well, it certainly appears as if it were done intentionally, and that's one of the concerns that most people have, is whether or not it was done intentionally, or whether it was just a dereliction of duty, or whether it was done because they couldn't get to it. I think the most important question that has to be asked is, was this intentional? If it was, it's clear that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who's a former federal judge, should actually be relieved of his duty. Whether that's a resignation, whether it's firing by the president, or whether it is actually an impeachment that's conducted by the United States Senate. That type behavior should not be acceptable in the United States government.
What he said, I say he, the Attorney General, I did not allow the time to run out. My special counsel has that authority. So he's standing behind him saying he had the authority to let the time run out. But it was illegal, but it wasn't me.
Absolutely. And we want the viewers to know that the statute of limitations has not expired on the 32nd episode of Brainstorming America. We'll see you back right after this break.
And welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins here, and I was in here with John Merrill, and we were talking about the Hunter Biden situation. It's in the courts right today. Well, it's not in the court, but it's being discussed as we sit here. And one of them was a gun violation, which was the irony of that.
Yeah, actually, they're before the House Judiciary Committee, and Chairman Jim Jordan from Ohio is the chairman of that committee, and he and Judge Garland have not gotten along very well in the past. That's been well documented, and I think the raucous hearings that have been demonstrated in the deliberations from all the members of the committee are going to continue to set fire to liberals and conservatives across the nation.
I started to get in here to the headquarters this morning in time to see if I could get the powers to be to see if we could go live with that, because boy, it was getting hot when I was coming down the road. Of course, then you had the lady from Texas. I can't think of her name now. The big mouth. Got something to say about everything. She was for. They defending him. They defending him like he's a prisoner of war, and he being beat up by some old bad boys beating him up, and Jordan and them are just saying, okay, Hunter Biden had no training, but Hunter Biden was receiving $20 million from an oil company, Burisma. He even told the lady at ABC he had no knowledge of anything. And she said, well, why do you think they're paying you that? He said, because of my last name. That came from Hunter Biden.
Right.
I saw it.
Right.
So now you got his daddy saying, as the Vice President of the United States, saying, you will not get this money if you don't fire, in our case, about your Attorney General. If you don't fire him. And the reason they wanted him fired, he was bringing heat on to Burisma, where his son, Hunter, was a board member. Hello? You folks, we got the smartest audience in the world. And I know you don't buy that. That's okay. that his daddy says to the president, if you don't fire this man within 6 hours, then you're not getting that billions of dollars.
Well, Ken, it certainly appears to be a classic case of quid pro quo. And that's something that nobody will actually stand for, because we know that that's against the law. When you're using your influence for personal gain, you're using your position for personal gain, you're using the privilege of growing up in a certain household for personal gain, that's diametrically opposed to the American way. And that's why the American people are not going to stand for it. And of course, it may not be reconciled in the Congress, it may not be reconciled in the courts, but I do believe it'll be reconciled in the court of public opinion come November 2024.
If anybody ever wants to know, you don't want to have to look it up on Google. Quid pro quo is something for something. I give you something, you give me something because I gave you something. Would that be?
Yes, sir.
That's
absolutely great definition.
Well, they didn't. They charged Donald Trump with that, but that wasn't what happened in his case. But
I don't think there's anything that you can give the president that he couldn't get himself.
You got that right. And speaking of that, another bad news is your president out there, I think Biden's his name, he canceled the last 7 leases that we had in the Arctic, oil leases. Now, we given.
Well, now I believe this, Ken. It's pretty clear to me, and of course, with all of my travels, that some people like to pay $4.50 a gallon of gas. I don't know why, but they enjoy it, and I don't. Frankly, I prefer my gas to be down below $2 a gallon, like it was when Donald Trump was president of the United States. But I do think that it's important to recognize the fact that whenever actions like this take place, and President Biden takes that executive action and cancels the leases that are in question, especially with these 7 countries that we're talking about, this particular situation is going to result in higher gas prices, higher oil prices, and it's going to hurt you with an inflationary measure in your pocketbook. And if that's something that you're comfortable with, then you need to go take out another loan so you can go fill up your vehicle. But if it's not, then you need to make sure that your voice is heard whenever election time comes around.
While he was doing that, he's also refusing to refill the drawdown of the emergency
Strategic
oil
oil
reserves.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard of that happening, because that's what it's there. The strategic oil reserve is there for an emergency, if we have an emergency. But we're having to pay Saudi Arabia, OPEC. We're having to pay them. We're paying Russia millions of dollars a day for oil. We're paying Russia. Did y'all hear me? We're paying Russia millions per day for oil, and we got the Arctic full. Now, what is that going to harm the environment? I don't know anybody that's been taking vacations, going to the Arctic and building their new condos up there.
No doubt. But you know, we don't want you to have a depletion in your strategic oil reserves. Why don't you take a break when we take one, go to the refrigerator, get you a Coca-Cola, get you some Golden Flake, come back and join us again for the last segment of Brainstorming America.
Welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins, and here with John Merrill. And John, when we went to break, we were talking about the Hunter Biden thing, but I want to switch to something now that only you could answer. I noticed that the bill for redistricting Alabama has hit a snag back in the courts again. What do you think's going to happen there?
It's hard to say, because now it's been turned over from the legislative body to the courts. The courts have assigned it to a special master to actually draw the districts as they'll be presented to the courts for approval. And then at that point, there'll be lines assigned for individuals to try to determine who wants to be the next 7 members of Congress for the state of Alabama. This is not an easy time for the state. I know that there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of concern about what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. But the main thing is to understand this. We believe that each and every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama should be given the opportunity to register to vote and to obtain a photo ID so they can participate at any level that they would like to participate in the electoral process. We believe that each and every eligible citizen of the state of Alabama should be adequately represented by a person that they are able to vote for in the district where they live so their voice can be heard. And then they can be represented in Washington and in Montgomery. We have to make sure that we hold those principles dear. And then when we do, we'll get the government that we deserve. But there's a lot of changes that need to take place now. In Washington, there's changes that need to take place in Montgomery. And so the next step is to see what the special master comes up with and then to take it to the polls March the 5th of next year as we start the nomination process as we move toward November for the general election in 2024.
It's going to be something to see the special master's plan when our districts were decided, I would say 100 years ago, but close to that. And like Tuskegee, for example, more blacks, because that was the cotton capital of Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Back in the day.
Yes, sir.
In Anniston, Alabama, that part over there on the west part of Anniston is more black because it used to be pipe shops.
Right.
And cotton mills.
Right.
In that area. And that's where people located where the work was.
Sure.
But things change over the years. And I don't know what our people need to know is they could end up with one more congresswoman, congressman, or our congressman to be removed, or whatever you used to. Sometimes I wonder if the work is worth it.
Well, it's always worth it, but I think it's also important to know and to remember that our congressman, Mike Rogers, is not going to be impacted by this, and this particular part of the state, Northeast Alabama, is not going to be negatively impacted. Congressman Rogers is the number 2 person in our delegation. He's been in Washington for 20 years and 6 months, doing a tremendous job. He is the first person in the history of the state to serve as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the House of Representatives, and we're delighted to have his leadership in Washington. We're also very thankful that he'll be continuing in that role for another 2 years, and hopefully as long as he wants to continue to serve in that capacity.
You know the old saying, you yell uncle when you're ready to, are you ready to yell uncle yet? That means you're ready to give up, right?
Yes, sir.
The mayor of New York is yelling uncle. 100,000.
Are you talking about the sanctuary city in New York?
Exactly what I got wrote right here.
There's a problem?
I got the mayor of New York City crying over the illegal immigrants, 100,000 into his sanctuary city.
So it's fine for the illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, the people who are here not according to proper immigration plans to live in Texas or Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, but if they go to New York, that's a problem?
It's a problem because they got a uh-oh happen. When you say, come on over to my house tonight, Ken, and bring all your friends. And I come in and bring them in, and you don't have enough chairs, you don't have enough food, you don't have enough beds, but you invited me.
So now the mayor of New York is a NIMBY.
He's not in my backyard.
Okay, just making sure we're on the same page.
Absolutely. It used to be that way. Environmental things are that way too. Yeah, that's exactly, but it's not just him. He's the one yelling the loudest, the squeaking wheel, I guess. Chicago, California, all of them are doing the same thing. They're yelling. We meant it, but we didn't mean it.
Well, when Governor DeSantis and when the governor from Texas decided that they would put folks in an airplane and send them to LaGuardia and let them out, then the illegals were not as welcome in New York as they had indicated that they would be when they were talking about sending them up there.
You know how I can tell that the Biden administration is not watching my Facebook?
Tell me.
Because I suggested that Governor Abbott send 80,000 illegals to a place called Delaware. Now, when they start showing up,
That might cover that whole state, my friend.
that's what I'm talking about.
80,000.
They're sanctuary city. They're sanctuary state, they said.
Yes, sir.
So I think we need to give, if anybody's out there got a contact with Joe Biden, tell him I said, be on the lookout, because I'm hoping that Governor Abbott's hearing me and might take me up on my suggestion. Because, boy, if they show up there, he's laying out there on the beach and the illegals come in, I don't think he's going to like it.
Well, Ken, you know Delaware was the first state, but obviously it would be the first state to scream when you're talking about having these people brought in from Florida because of Governor DeSantis' order, or Texas because of Governor Abbott's order. But I also think it's time to remind the viewers that we're not opposed to immigration. We just want people that come to the United States to come the right way. And there is a prescribed way, according to the code and the Constitution of the United States, for those people to come here and to live in our nation. And anybody that wants to do that is welcome.
Absolutely. I say, come on. I don't want you to come to my house. I don't have room for you.
No, but let me say this. We want you to come back to our house again next week. We're so delighted that you joined us once again for the 32nd episode of Brainstorming America. We'll hope you'll join us again next week. Thanks for being with Ken and me, and we'll see you again soon.